Part two of my Holley 4150 rebuilding series. So for this one, we've already taken apart the primary side. So now we're going to take apart the secondary fuel bowl, which very similar. The major difference is that you don't have a secondary metering block here in this assembly. So this will go a little bit quicker. So let's go ahead and get started. First, we're going to remove the 4 bolts, hold this in place. Okay, take off the bolts. Okay, you'll notice that on the secondary metering or the secondary float bowl or fuel bowl, there is no accelerator pump, or people call squirters. Even though it kind of has that design on it, there is not one for this. So you don't have to worry about that. So that's one less part to worry about there. So let's go ahead with the disassembly. So for this, pretty basic, just like with the primary side, we are going to take off we're going to first start with the valve and seat. So it comes off the same way, very easy. Unscrew this until we can get that valve out. Okay, same thing we're looking for, making sure it moves very easily. These are newer, I just replaced these, so I know everything is good there. Then we are going to remove the actual float from the secondary fuel bowl. So just take off these 2 little screws, flathead screws, and the whole assembly will come right out. I know these are good because I actually replaced this whole assembly with a new one. The old one was in pretty crappy condition. So here we are. We've got our bare secondary. We've got our inlet here. Don't really need to take this off. I know everything's fine here. Again, like I recommended to you all, I do recommend that you put in the filter that goes in here. There's a little brass filter insert that fits in here. I recommend that you put one of those in if you don't already have one. And here with the float, we're checking its movement. Obviously it has the spring back there. I replaced the spring. Everything looks great on this. All right, now what makes the primary side different from the secondary side here is on the secondary side, we have what I referred to earlier as a metering plate. Rather than having a whole separate metering block, this has a metering plate. Now these plates can be changed if you want to adjust the fueling on the secondary side, but these are pretty basic. Generally don't have to mess with them. One thing I did replace on these is that normally securing this plate onto the body of the carburetor, you've got these clutch head screws, which I find strip pretty easily. So I actually replaced them with Phillips head screws. They're identical, except for the head. So let's go ahead and take this off. And with this, the only thing we really need to do with this, so we're going to take these screws off, and if this is a old carburetor that I was rebuilding for the first time, I would just go ahead and replace the gaskets. And there are going to be 2 gaskets on here. And I remember the first time I looked at one of these and was rebuilding it, I was a little bit confused at first with 2 gaskets, one on top of the other. But that's the way this is designed, and I'm going to show you in just a moment. Okay. All right, so the plate comes right off, and this is what it looks like on the underside. You can see there are these channels for the fuel to go through. So it has this gasket, and then there is another gasket underneath. So you might as well just go ahead and replace both of them. Again, gaskets are all consumable. When you buy a carburetor rebuild kit, it should come with all the gaskets that you need. All you have to do is you have to specify the carburetor type. In this case, it's a 4150. So you specify 4150, and it comes with all the correct gaskets. If you want to be a little bit more specific, on the choke tower of your carburetor, you're going to see some numbers on it. Even though this is a 4150 type carburetor, the actual more specific code for it is this is a 3310, and it's a third generation, 3310-3. So you can get a carburetor kit specific for a 3310-3, and that's what I recommend, so that you don't get a whole bunch of parts you don't need, and it has everything that you do. So always look at that number. If you're curious what the numbers are underneath the type of carburetor, those are date codes. And if your carburetor was made before 1973, it will be a 3-digit date code. And the way that they work is completely different from 3-digit and 4. If it was a 3-digit, the first digit indicates the year. So if it's a 5 as the first digit, that means it's a probably 1965. And then the two numbers that follow, the second number is the month in which it was manufactured, and the third number is the week of that month. So say it was a 521, that means it's from 1965. The 2 is for February, and the 1 is the first week of February. So first week, February 1965 for 521. So anyhow, just a little tip for you. So let me go ahead and get back to the work. Put it back on the stand. And that's it for part 2. It was pretty quick getting through part 2 for the secondary. It is, there are fewer things that you need to disassemble and you need to work on. And in part 3, we are going to go ahead and we're going to tackle the secondary along with the diaphragm that's inside here, replacing that, and then inspecting the choke mechanism. Choke mechanisms are pretty easy. Either they're working or they're not. I actually don't really care for the plastic assemblies. I prefer the ones that are metal. They're a lot more durable. I've had these crack, split, break before. Not a big fan of the plastic ones, so whenever I have an opportunity, I do try and replace these with metal hardware. So anyhow, that's it for part 2. Thanks for listening in, and we'll get to part 3 where we get to tackle this end and then put everything back together again. Thanks, everyone.